Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you. I know you're watching us on ANAP's page on LinkedIn. That's where we want to run this event today. And thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your time. You're not going to regret it. Okay. I'm Irene Lyakovetsky, and I am here with Dieter Matzion. Dieter, how are you?
Doing great. Thank you for having me, and thank you for attending this live event. I really appreciate it. Please feel free to ask questions, right? Can they ask questions? I hope they can ask questions.
Absolutely. We're gonna encourage everyone in the audience. Ask questions, comment. We want to know, right, what phase in FinOps journey you're at. Okay, what are the challenges? We're gonna talk about some today, right? But most importantly, we know that we want to know that you're there. And Dieter is here, our esteemed guest. Thank you, Dieter, for coming back. All right, we had a session
Cool.
last year, seemed like a
Yeah,
long time ago. Thank you for coming back. We're going to talk about FinOps journey. What else? Right? And we're going to cover some challenges and hopefully providing some tips how to overcome those, right? So people,
absolutely.
absolutely. So to our audience, again, please ask us questions, okay? We'll make sure Dieter answers them live. Again, so let's get going. Dieter is a FinOps ambassador and practitioner, a certified engineer. Dieter, you're just the right person. So you worked for a few companies, right, where you developed your FinOps expertise since 2013, correct?
That's correct. Yep. Yeah,
Good,
I
good.
worked for Google, Netflix, Intuit, and Roku most recently, right? And as a FinOps ambassador, I do a lot of outreach, right? On average, I talk to maybe one or two companies a week. So it's like 50 to 100 different companies a year. So if you want to talk to me, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn.
Amazing work you're doing. Yes, I encourage everyone to follow Dieter. I do because he shares wisdom, he shares knowledge right there on LinkedIn and Twitter, right? You're on Twitter, Dieter, as well, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Fabulous. So let's get going, right? We said we're gonna talk about journey and challenges. So what are the main challenges you see out there, Dieter, while talking to your clients and with multiple audiences?
Of course, there are, each client is different and each client has their own problems, right? But when we look at last year's FinOps Foundation survey, right? The this year's the 2023 is going to be published, I would say maybe this or next month, right? So at the moment we have only last year's data, and you can find it on at data.finops.org. Data.finops.org. You just go there, and there is a wealth of information, right? There's also a chart about the FinOps challenges that people see. So there was maybe a list of 20 or so, right? And the survey responders, they were allowed to pick multiple of these, right? And the number one challenge is getting engineers to take action. About 30% of people responded with this choice. Then next was accurate forecasting with 29%, enabling automation with 20%, reducing waste and unused resources with 19%, and aligning finance with engineering with 16%.
Yeah, so let's talk about those categories, right? What they really means, because it's not about percentages, right? I'm sure the main challenges, companies and engineers and financial groups facing, all right, they are widespread. So which ones do you think really resonating with what you're seeing? Mhm.
I think getting engineers to take action, right, is a big one that I encounter at every employer that I've worked for, right, and that is the biggest number one challenge as well, right. When you think about it, the way I approach that is we have a two-pronged approach, right. We do a top-down where we start with the executives, right, and it really depends on the knowledge and skill level of your executives when it comes to cloud FinOps, right? Are they already knowledgeable, right? Do they are they supportive already, or is this the first time that they learn about that, right? Because the goal here is that executives need to understand that cloud financial management has been around for over 10 years, right? We just didn't call it FinOps yet. We called it back then cloud financial management or cloud cost optimization, something like that, right? What the FinOps Foundation really did is put together a robust and repeatable framework around cloud financial management that we now call Cloud FinOps, right? So FinOps has been around for over a decade, right? The cloud started in 2006. So we have been doing this for a while, and it's an ongoing effort, right? We are looking at really, FinOps has only two levers that we can pull, right? There is rate optimization and usage optimization on a very high level, right? Um, and the executives need to understand that rate and usage optimization are things that are happening on an ongoing basis, right? They don't stop because your engineers don't stop innovating. Your engineers don't stop building new workloads in the cloud, expanding existing ones, right? Retiring existing ones and replacing them with something else. Because the engineers are working, they are creating a mess. You know, that's normal. Everyone who is working is creating a mess, right? Look at a carpenter or something like that, right? So FinOps is really an ongoing thing that is needed all the time, and this support needs to trickle down from the executives through leadership into management, right? Now, I did say it is a two-pronged approach, right? We go top down. That is one way of doing that, right? And there will be challenges with the knowledge level of individuals, right? But then we also do a bottom up, right? Where we engage with the engineers, and there are a couple of ways of doing that, right? You can do regular tech talks. That is a lightweight session or way of doing it, right? So let's say once a month you have like an Amazon tech talk or an Azure tech talk about a specific topic, right? And when you do this tech talk, you do sort of like in maybe half of it is introductory, and the other half is going more into details, right? And to basically educate and train the engineers, right? Because that is what is required. A lot of engineers, I have met engineers that were, highly successful for over a decade, right? And then cloud came, right? And they don't know anything about cloud. And so they need to learn, they want to learn, right? And ultimately, engineers need to consider cost in the cloud as just another dimension that they need to optimize, right? They're already optimizing a lot of different things, right? Response time, memory, bandwidth, all kinds of things, right? Cost needs to become another dimension that they want to optimize. So that is about, making engineers to take action.
Yep. I'm glad you brought this up because making engineers, to me, it's like more organizational tasks, right? Besides training, besides providing the guidance, right, to engineers, it's more about, I don't know, up to their leaders and managers to find the way to work collectively and understand and plan ahead. But you brought a fantastic point here that for every engineer, planning for cloud cost on individual level, right? You're kind of building in that capability, right? So
Exactly.
this is important to highlight. Absolutely, thank you so much. And we said the second biggest challenge over there, because we kind of want to cover them all, right?
Yes, let's do
Yeah,
it.
accurate forecasting. You said, right? So
Mhm.
what's well, how to
Let's Let's
address and
talk about it. Yeah. So, we do a lot of surveys, right, and a lot of data gathering at the FinOps Foundation, right? And kind of consider when there's a forecast variance. A variance is when there is you're off by a certain percentage from the actuals later on, right? So we consider a 20% variance to be maybe an established. So established would be a maturity, right? 10% would be called an enhanced, and so enhanced would be actually the walk maturity, established would be crawl, and then everything 5% or better would be an Excel maturity, right? I have a lot of experience with cloud forecasting. I have been working on that for the last 6 years. And we currently have a system that has a variance of 2% or less. So if you have any questions, please reach out on how to accomplish that, right? But what I want to give you here is kind of like the basic building blocks to get to a established or to an enhanced maturity, right? For one thing, you will very likely need historic cloud spend data, right? Unless your spend is completely flat or it's increasing consistently, right? There may be some seasonality, and you need to capture that seasonality, right? And in your forecasts, you will need to capture, let's say the most recent actuals with historic actuals. So you need to find a balance between current and historic cloud spend, right? Maybe start with a 50-50% allocation of historic versus current, and then play around with it, right? Go to like 80-20 and see how that changes it, right? When you start on your forecasting journey, start with exponential smoothing, right? Something like Holt Winter's triple exponential smoothing. It is very well documented. It is, maybe not trivial, but it is simple enough to be able to mate in spreadsheet formulas, right? Use the exponential smoothing as sort of like a baseline for your forecasts, right? And then to really get good at it, you will need to have the engineers estimate new workloads, right? Every cloud has a cost calculator that you can use. Oracle, IBM, Azure, AWS, and GCP all have cost calculators that work reasonably well, right? They need to estimate new workloads. They need to estimate optimizations to existing workloads, right? And you need to estimate rate optimizations, whether you do it through, reservations, RI savings plans, or enterprise discounts. If your discount changes over time, these changes need to be modeled and then layered on top of the forecasts, right? And that will improve your forecast accuracy. That will give you those really tight variances.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks, Dieter, for this. So, another one in that list is enabling automation. I'm a little shocked to see it among challenges. Okay, we think about automation as, the tool to make our lives easier, right? So, but I understand the context there. So, why is it a challenge to enable automation across organizations?
I think it is part that you cross the threshold from being able to do that something centrally to having to actually go to an engineer and have them write code, right? And engineers don't want to fail. So if you ask them, hey, I need you to write some code, they're very hesitant to build something because they don't want to build the wrong thing. They don't want to make a mistake, and they don't want to build something, spend their time, right, their life on something that is not going to be used. So you need to understand how engineers are thinking, right? You need to understand their soul and go with that, right? Now, there are a couple of open source tools that you might be able to use, like, for example, Cloud Custodian is a good one that was initiated by Capital One. And there's also commercial solutions that help with automation, right? I think maybe FinOps has some capabilities. Torbot is typically a one that is being mentioned, right? One of the early ones. Torbot actually, in part, leverages Cloud Custodian and has over 7,000 customizable automation policies that you can set up, right? But overall, I suggest to start small, right? Observe what people are doing manually, right? And see what they are doing regularly manually, right? And then take one of those processes. It could be forecasting, it could be waste detection, it could be anomaly detection, something, right? Something that happens on a regular basis, and write a really small, lightweight script for it, right? Don't make this a big deal, right? Something in Python, in a notebook, and get that one codified, right? And then run the script as a test, right? Have it running for a couple months, maybe half a year, right? Be generous about it and see where improvements are needed. Let those exceptions surface over time, right? They won't show up on the first weekend when this thing is running. And gradually make improvements to it, right? And then build it out from there, right? So that is a good way of getting it started. And whenever you engage with engineers, lower their anxiety level, right, about what is to do. Just say like, hey, I just want something quick and dirty. It doesn't even have to work, right? If it works, fine. If not, that's fine too, right? And then evolve it from there, right? Automation really is the key to a lot of the waste elimination. And maybe we're going to talk about this later. But when you look at waste, you have a curved graph like this, right? And so 80% of your dollar value will be in 20% of the graph, right? While 80% of the graph, of the dots in the graph, right, will make up 20% of your dollar value. So you have a long tail, we call this, right? And automation is really the only efficient way to handle these, 10 cent, $1, maybe $10 wastes that you can't really ask an engineer, because even if the engineer works 10 minutes on that, that's already more than the actual waste in an entire month, right? So you will need some automation to help with those cleanup procedures.
You know what? I love the way, again, you bring it up, because automation can help you to discover your current process, right? Because when you write those scripts, you're asking yourself questions: why do I do this every day? And that's already an optimization before even getting to
Exactly.
cloud costs, right? So
Yeah.
here's the thought, right? So there's nothing stopping you to automate on small scale, right, Dieter? Starting small, seeing what works, right, and eliminating unnecessary waste this way first, right? Absolutely. Wow, I learned something here, Dieter, every day. Thank you so much for this. Yep, yep. And you mentioned reducing waste and detecting anomalies. All right, what are the smart ways to going about it? Because everyone wants to reduce waste, I suspect. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's different numbers out there. There's a number from I believe Forrester out there of 30% cloud waste, that when you actually follow it in their, they keep referencing it every year, right? And it goes back to like before 2010 actually, right? So it's already by now a really old number. But 30-40% is not uncommon, right? When I started at one company, I believe we had like a 20 to 30% waste, and one of our mission goals was to get it to 5%, right? So with waste, here's my guidance, right? Every cloud provider has waste, that is inherent to the way you use their systems, right? Waste could be orphaned resources, right? Like you had a disk volume attached to a virtual machine, and then you terminated the virtual machine, but the disk volume still sticks around, right? And you will keep paying for that forever, right? It doesn't go away, unfortunately. So a lot of the waste reduction efforts is really because the cloud providers don't have these cleanup procedures in place. I wish they would, right? And there is, every cloud provider has maybe 50 of those types of waste that some of them are shared across cloud providers, like these disk volumes. The orphan disk volumes is one of them, right? But some of these wastes are unique to a cloud provider, right? That only happen with Amazon or only happen with Google, right? Um, these types of waste opportunities, right, or savings opportunities, are relatively well known. There are open source GitHub pages where waste centers are listed, and simply look at uh, half a dozen of waste centers, right? Surface that waste and see what the dollar amount is for your organization. How much, is it $10,000? Is it $100, right? And then pursue those types of waste by using automation, building, lightweight script, so-called waste centers, right, to surface those savings opportunities. And then what I like to do is surface them as a dollar amount, right? So if you don't know how to calculate waste, here's a quick rundown. You take the current actual spend, right, with enterprise discounts, RI savings plans, everything, right? Your current actual spend, and then you look at what an optimized workload spend would look like, right? So you have the optimized workload and you have your current spend, right? And then you subtract the optimized workload from your current spend, and what you are left with is the overspend, right? The overage, right? And that is the number that you surface in a dashboard, right? And you can then aggregate that by account, by business unit, by engineering owner, right? And you sort it by the highest dollar amount on top, right? So this is the person to talk to. This is the account or the project, right, or the subscription with the most problems. So that is a good way of doing it. One of the first things that will happen is people will ask for exceptions, right? They will say like, hey, you know what? I can't change anything about this, right? I don't want to be shown on the dashboard because that makes me look bad, right? The first thing that in my practice, right, people ask for exceptions. If you have to build exceptions, quick tip, make them time limited, right? 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, right? Possibly have a VP level approval, something, right? That not everyone can have an exception. And then have a separate dashboard with just exceptions so that leadership still can see, hey, those are all the things that are still on deck. We are not going to talk about them for like a year or two, right? But those are the things that are still an issue for us that we still need to work with, right? So that is when it comes to unused or underutilized resources, that is how you handle it. Now, over time, maybe you start with half a dozen waste sensors, right? Then you expand it to 1 dozen, 2 dozen, right? One thing that you need to communicate very well is that when you only had half a dozen, 6 waste sensors, right? You surfaced X amount dollars in waste. If you increased your waste sensors, the bar increases as well, right? Your engineering leadership should not be surprised by that bar increasing, right? You need to go reach out to them. You need to align and say like, your dollar amount will increase because we are adding more visibility into waste, right? Overall, it is a good thing for our organization, but what was $50,000 last month, maybe now $70,000. So don't be surprised.
You know what, hey, that makes me think, reduce waste, is it a task, or I would say work stream almost, right? Is it done at the individual level, or someone centrally, distributed across few groups maybe? Because I'm trying to think engineers experimenting. You said their work to make life messier, okay, to come up with something great. So how
Exactly.
do you at the same time performing the steps you describe with reducing waste? To me, it makes sense to have cloud practitioner, right, FinOps practitioner, to sort of work for a group, or maybe even like having central excellence,
Yeah.
okay, somewhere. So what's the organizational advice there, how to approach it?
Yeah, I have seen very different things, right? But one thing that you can surface the opportunities centrally, right? There is no harm in doing that. But of course, the execution of the opportunities, right? The usage optimizations, they have to be done decentralized by the engineering teams, right? And I've seen different things where this is a percentage of a sprint, right? Spend 20% of your sprint time on waste reduction efforts, pick something, open a ticket, execute on the ticket, right? I have seen also organizations like we did this last November, where we said, hey, you know what? The next 2 sprints, everyone within the company, we are not going to do new development. We're just focusing on waste reduction, right? I have seen that the FinOps practitioner is centrally, and then people come and interact with them, right? But I have seen that when the engineering body gets too large, right? When you have 2,000, 4,000, 6,000 engineers, that they may get, support a dedicated role just for that engineering organization. So there might be still a central cloud center of excellence or cloud FinOps team, right? But then this cloud FinOps team is sort of sponsoring a headcount in an engineering organization because they essentially have 24/7 a need for this cloud FinOps person, right? So yes, I have seen all those variants, and it really depends on your organization and what works well, right? I have seen cloud FinOps team be 5-7 people strong for organizations that are in the 15-20,000 employees, right? I've seen cloud FinOps a part-time person, right, for an organization that is 500 people strong, right? So whatever works best for you, you will need to find that out.
Good, good. Okay, one word to the audience. All right, ask us questions. Okay, if anything that we mentioned so far, is it resonating? Is it something you're struggling with as well? Or maybe you have another tip? So we want this conversation here. That's why it's a live event. Okay, we need to know you're out there. So Dieter, thank you. Thank you so very much. Those are pearls of wisdom. I mean, no less. They come from experiences, and I'm sure you do a lot of this knowledge spreading work. Okay, so those simple things only come with experience, right? Not from the books. mainly.
That's
Wonderful.
right.
So why don't we talk about aligning finance with engineers in FinOps ecosystem? Because somehow it's still bubbling up as a challenge. That means people
Yes.
still don't understand, right? Don't realize and don't frankly work very well together. So what are your observations?
From my experience, that was a little bit challenging for me because I was always able to align this naturally, right? Finance with engineering in every company but then I also worked maybe at very progressive organizations, right? But at every company that was not a challenge, right? However, what I do want to share with the audience, if you have a problem to get these two aligned, right? Um, the engineers need to be aware of that there are a lot of finance processes that happen behind the scenes that are critical to the business. For example, cloud spend attribution to business owners and sometimes business functions. So there's like a virtual function, something like mobile, that finance needs to be able to attribute that. Sometimes finance does a capital expenditures versus operational expenditures, right? Maybe some of the research and design R&D type of engineering work can be moved out of operational into capital expenditures, right? So there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes, and let me expand on that. We touched on cloud spend forecasting, right? Why does finance do that? Well, when you look at the total income that an organization has, right, maybe about half of it is on headcount. And then out of the other half, there is quite a chunk that is on physical buildings, unfortunately still, right? And physical operations, things also like marketing, right? Cafeteria, physical security, janitorial services, landscaping, that kind of stuff, right? So what we are really left with is a relatively small slice that all the innovation is happening in that small slice, right? And if we get the slice sized incorrectly for cloud, right, we either don't do enough innovation, or some of the innovation that we started when we're running over budget in the cloud, we need to put it on ice, right? We have to freeze it and put it on hold. So cloud spend forecasting is some if you don't really understand behind the scenes why it is so critical for the organization, it determines how much cloud budget you get, right? It determines how much innovation, how much playtime you're really getting. And if you don't know that, forecasting seems like this unnecessary thing for an engineer, right? Then you need to regularly review actuals versus budget, right? Otherwise, what's the point of setting a budget, right? You have a budget and you never go and check against it, right? And then if you're over budget, right, what are the options that you're having? Well, we talked about the waste sensors before. Maybe you have $50,000-$70,000 in waste that you can spend some time on realizing those usage optimizations and offset your budget overage, right? If you are under budget, in my experience, very often it's you have trouble hiring, right? And there's maybe you're not spending enough time. There is not the resources that you're looking for. That a multitude of possibilities, right? Then spend anomalies. They happen all the time, and they are not always large. We had the spend anomaly that was something like $30,000 a day, a day. However, that team, that engineering division, had a budget of something like $4 million a month, right? So you're just looking at the graph. You may not actually see the $30,000 a day. You need really a tool that can go onto a very fine-grained level and see, hey, this workload used to be, $100, now it's $30,000. Something changed, right? And finance is driving that and is helping with that. Finance also does procurement, right? Procurement and paying the invoices. The cloud bill does not magically pay itself, right? There is a process behind the scenes. There is a purchase requisition, a purchase order. There is an invoice that gets attached to the purchase order. There is an ACH payment that gets queued up, right? Engineers really need visibility. And I think if you explain those things to engineers, right? If you provide that visibility, they are very much willing to do something with it, right? New vendor onboarding, ongoing vendor management, right? And just sharing this knowledge, explaining to the engineers why those processes are required, right? This is not just like an old person asking for something that we don't no longer need. No, those are ongoing activities that are critical to run the business, right? And being able to get the understanding of the engineers, right? And being able to also explain to finance that, listen, engineers are people, right? They are like artists. They're producing something that hasn't existed before, right? It is code, sure. It is not a Mona Lisa here, right? But it is still an artistic thing. There's some creativity required, right? You don't always feel like writing code. Sometimes on the weekend there is a 2 hour time period where you just sit down and you start like scrambling, right? And you write like a lot of code. And 2 weeks later you look at it and you don't recognize it anymore, right? It is a little bit of an art. So the finance people or anyone else, right, in leadership needs to understand that it's a creative process, right? There's a lot of anxiety of doing the wrong thing, making a mistake, building something that is vaporware, shelfware, right? Who has done that in their life, right? That we spent 18 months building something that was never used later on, right? Engineers don't want that, right? They want their creativity to be used, to be utilized, to be leveraged, to be an active thing that people are appreciating, right? So just sharing the culture between these really helps with getting that alignment.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, what a fine analogy you used. Okay, to me, coders, they saying they like artists, they writers. We hear about writer's block. Now we heard about coders block, and exactly anxiety and depression. We don't
Yes,
want that to happen, right? We want creative people to
exactly.
create. Fantastic, fantastic. And there is this, what is it, natural kind of conflicting priorities, right? If you're too
Yes,
safe, you're not experimenting, right? If your finance just in place and everything just running like a clock, sometimes you limit people creativity. So thank you, Dieter, for bringing all this up, right? And we are at NAPS, so I want to encourage everyone to sign up today, FinOps on NAPS. Last week, Tim Cassell, head of product of NAPS, proclaimed the new manifesto. I'm so impressed by it. The manifesto is it is a basic human right to have a free visibility platform. How do you like that,
I
Dieter?
like it.
Okay.
I
That
think it should be a basic human right.
it is a basic human right, okay, and it's definitely free when you start FinOps on NApps. There's team of experts and there's absolutely fantastic expertise to help you along. And also Dieter, as a certified FinOps practitioner, is out there. You see how accessible and easy to talk to Dieter is, and he's a wealth of knowledge, presenting and sharing and just teaching and guiding. Dieter, thank you so very much for your time today.
Absolutely.
Can we conclude with few takeaways? We talked about challenges, but mainly you provide so much tips and guidance how to overcome those. Mhm.
When it comes to FinOps challenges, I think you don't have to be, when we look at crawl, walk, run, or the FinOps Foundation is going to change that into established, enhanced, and excelling, right? If you look at that, you don't need to be excel everywhere, right? Just cut yourself some slack as well, right? If you only need to do forecasting once a year, right? You don't need maybe automation. You can do it manually, right? Unless it really takes like 3 months to do it manually, right? Then maybe you want to take a look at automation. But really take it easy on yourself, right? Do baby steps, right? And then build on top of that. This is, when I started, I didn't know much either, right? But you learn over time. You learn to align different teams with each other, right? You learn of all the things how to partner, right? If you want to partner with someone, tell them, ask them what their problems are, tell them what your problems are. You find a common ground, right? And then how can we help each other, right? It's very easy, but if you don't know how to do it, right? the first time will be hard. So don't be shy. Just go for it. Just do it, and you will grow from there.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you everybody for attending today. So comment if you watch us in replay. And Dieter, thank you so very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.